All right, everybody, welcome to another episode of Bear's Guide to a 5. Now, remember, the first time you're watching this should be on Canvas through Edpuzzle to answer the questions. If you're watching this a second, third, fourth, fifth time, or you're just a random person that happened upon my videos, welcome. You're going to learn about Thomas Malthus and the theory of overpopulation. All right, so this is our last video in Chapter 2 on population, and what we're going to look at is the unique theory of Thomas Malthus and this dude who thought the world was overpopulated. And not only are we going to analyze that theory, we're going to critique that theory and then think about how it exists today. So before we can even get started, we have to talk about density again. Remember, density is the amount of people in a space, right? Now, it depends if we're measuring the people to total land, people to arable land, or farmers to arable land. And we know that these numbers give us an idea of if a country is developed or not, based off if their agricultural density is very high, a lot of people farming, they're subsistence farmers. If their agricultural density is very low, it's generally an MDC, and it's commercial farmers with huge plots of land, and it's generally a developed country, right? But when we think about this stuff, we have to think about resources and stuff like that. We're looking at these densities and we're going, wow, there's a lot of people to arable land, and that puts a lot of stress on the arable land. Does this country provide enough for its people? All of these questions. So Malthus's theory on overpopulation, he believed that population increases geometrically while food production increases arithmetically. Now, that is a very complicated way to basically say population essentially like doubles, it squares, right? But food can only grow so much. Food production only grows as much as we increase the amount of land that we produce. So effectively, population grows a whole lot faster, and we're going to run out of resources eventually. His whole theory was that we're going to run out of resources, population is going to be too big, there's not going to be enough food, and the whole world is going to end when we all start fighting. If this rings any bell to you, yeah, Thanos is a fan of Thomas Malthus. He's all about that. So to give you an example of what he would think, he would say, okay, there's one person, there's 1 unit of food, but tomorrow it's going to be 2 people and 2 units of food. Then it'll be 4 people and only 3 units of food. Then 8 people and 4 units of food. And 16 to 5, because we can only create more units of food as we have more people who can work that land. But people reproduce, people have kids. We talked about population pyramids. We've talked about NIR. We've talked about the population explosions. And the fact is, if you have a youth dependency ratio and you have a bunch of kids, they can't go out and farm, right? So what he argued was that population growth would only stop if people started to practice moral restraint, basically stop having kids and lower those crude birth rates. Or we need a good famine, disease, war, or some other disaster to raise the crude death rate. Yeah, pretty brutal. And fans of The Office, yeah, he's your Dwight Schrute, right? He's like, we need a good plague. Thankfully, that's not the answer. In fact, many believe that Malthus was wrong. You see, when Malthus wrote his theory, no country had transitioned to stage 3 of the demographic transition model. They were all stuck in stage 2. And we know that stage 1, stage 2, we'll say stage 2, was the population explosion. That's when population rates were absolutely exponentially increasing. And of course, if that's what you saw, you would come up with this theory too. But we know that things change, right? As technological advancements have improved, that means we can grow more food from the same, amount of area, and we can have all this food and all these resources, and people won't starve. We know that people started practicing, family planning, that there's contraceptives, that economies changed. Not everybody was agriculture based. All these ideas eventually prove Malthus wrong. So then you get the cornucopians, right? So you have the Malthusians who believe in Malthus, and then you have the anti-Malthusians, or the cornucopians, that believe there is enough food. It's just that our transportation networks and our distribution networks don't work well enough to get people food in all parts of the world. And this takes me to carrying capacity. Now, I've brought this up before, casually talked about it, but now we officially know it, right? It's the amount of people land can support. And we know that Earth has a carrying capacity. So Malthus believed that we are going to exceed these carrying capacities and start killing each other over food, right? But the fact is, we have exceeded the carrying capacity of the planet 2.5 times over. We are able to harvest so much more from the planet because of advanced technologies, because of advanced agriculture technologies, creating synthetic materials. And this theory of overcoming any barrier or idea or overcoming nature with technology is possibilism, right? And that's where the cornucopians really, really get the benefit of their theory. Because as we keep improving technology, as long as we keep innovating as humans, we're going to find ways to make this work. Now, the third group of people we have to talk about are the NeoMalthusians. Now, neo in front of a word generally means like new. So these are like the new Malthusians. And they're like, yeah, Malthus was close to being right. Now, it's not food that's the problem, right? What they say is that population growth in LDCs, the developing world, is even faster than Malthus predicted. And that's true because we see in the developing world, we know that's where the population growth is happening. We know that's where we see total fertility rates in the 3, 4s, 5s, 6, or even 7s. So what neo-Malthusians argue is that we are going to run out of oil and clean water, finite resources along those lines, and then we will fight over that. And if anybody has, if you're thinking what I'm thinking, yes, this is the plot to Mad Max, where they fight over water. If you don't know what that is, that's okay. If you do, you get the joke. So what do you really need to know today, right? Short lesson, really straightforward. I want you to make sure you understand Malthus's theory, the idea of population exponentially increasing and resources not. But I also need you to understand the anti-Malthusians' perspective on it and the neo-Malthusians' perspective on it. And then finally, we have to be able to describe why Malthus was wrong, but we can still learn from Malthus. But it's really important to understand all the reasons why he was wrong and what changed over time. So as always, make sure to smash that like button, leave a comment, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you know when new videos are released. As always, this is Bear's Guide to a 5, and we'll see you next time.